Hope you all are fine and doing your preparations well. Okay, we are starting polity. First is Haryana Official Language Amendment Act 2020. The Haryana government's decision to enforce use of Hindi in all courts and tribunals across the state has been challenged in the Supreme Court recently. According to the Haryana Official Language Amendment Act 2020, in all civil courts and criminal courts in Haryana, subordinate to the High Court of Punjab and Haryana, all revenue courts and rent tribunals or any other court or tribunal constituted by the state government, work shall be done in Hindi language. Article 348(1) of the Constitution provides that all proceedings in the Supreme Court and in every High Court shall be in English language until Parliament by law otherwise provides. Article 348(2) states that Governor of the state may, with the previous consent of the President, authorize the use of the Hindi language or any other language used for any official purpose of the state in the proceedings of the High Court having its principal seat in that state, provided that decrees. Judgments or orders passed by such High Court shall be in English. Section 7 of the Official Languages Act 1963 provides that the use of Hindi or official language of a state in addition to the English language may be authorized with the consent of the President of India by the Governor of the state for purpose of judgments made by the High Court. Next one is Goods and Services Tax GST Council. Widespread news. Recently, Union Finance Minister chaired the 40th GST Council meet. This was the first meeting of the GST Council during lockdown, in which impact of COVID-19 revenue collection was discussed. All right. The GST Council is a constitutional body established under Article 279A of Indian Constitution. It makes recommendations to the union and state government on issues related to goods and service tax. The GST Council is chaired by the Union Finance Minister, and other members are the Union State Minister of Revenue or Finance and ministers in charge of finance or taxation of all the states. Every decision of the GST Council shall be taken at a meeting by a majority of not less than 3/4 members of the weighted votes of the members presented and voting in accordance with the following principles, namely, the vote of the central government shall have a weightage of 1/3 of the total vote cast, and the votes of all the state governments taken together shall have a weightage of 2/3 of the total votes cast in that meeting. The GST Council shall determine the procedure in the performance of its functions. Next one is electronically transmitted postal ballot papers, that is ETPB. All right. Widespread news. Recently, the age limit has been reduced for voters to opt for postal ballot in Lok Sabha and Assembly. Keeping in mind the safety of senior citizens and amid rising cases of the coronavirus, the age limit has been reduced. Postal voting is a type of voting in elections whereby electronically transmitted postal ballots paper ETPB are distributed to electors and returned by post. Service voters belonging to armed forces or forces to which provisions of Army Act 1950 are applicable have the option of either voting through postal ballot or through a proxy voter. While prisoners are not allowed to vote, people under preventive detention can cast their vote through postal ballots as well. In 2019, the Law Ministry amended the Code of Conduct Elections, election rules, to allow people with disabilities and those who are 80 years of age or above to opt for postal ballot during Lok Sabha Assembly elections. All right. Now the ministry notified a fresh change in the rules, allowing those aged 65 years and above to opt for postal ballot. Next one is Ranbir Singh Committee. Widespread news. Recently, the Ministry of Home Affairs MHA constituted a national level committee for reform in criminal law. The committee has been constituted under Ranbir Singh, Vice Chancellor, National Law University NLU, Delhi, and several other members. The committee would be gathering opinions online by consulting with experts and collating material for their report to the government. The consultation exercise would start on 4th July 2020 and go on for the next 3 months. The codification of criminal laws in India was done during the British rule, which more or less remains the same even in the 21st century. Lord Thomas Babington Macaulay is said to be the chief architect of codifications of criminal laws in India. Criminal law in India is governed by Indian Penal Code 1860, Code of Criminal Procedure 1973, and Indian Evidence Act 1872, etc. Next one is Article 164(1)(a) of the Indian Constitution. Whites in News, the Congress party alleged that strength of Madhya Pradesh ministry exceeds the constitutional limit. Article 164(1)(a) of the Constitution that prescribed the total number of ministers, including the chief minister in the Council of Ministers, in a state shall not exceed 15% of the total number of members of the Legislative Assembly of that state, provided that the number of ministers, including chief minister in a state, shall not be less than 12. Disabled are entitled to same benefits of SC/ST quota by Supreme Court. Whites in News, recently the Supreme Court of India observed that persons suffering from disabilities are also socially backward and entitled to the same benefits of relaxation as scheduled caste, scheduled tribe candidates in public employment and education. In the Anmol Bhandari versus Delhi Technological University case 2012, the Delhi High Court held that people suffering from disabilities are also socially backward and are therefore at the very least entitled to same benefits given to the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe candidates. All right. Article 15(4) empowers the state to make special provision for the advancement of the SCs and the STs, example, providing fee concession in admission to any educational institution, building hostels for SCs and STs. Article 15(5) empowers the state to reserve seats for SCs and STs in admission to educational institutions, including private educational institutions, whether aided or unaided by the state. Article 16(4) empowers the state to make provisions for the reservation of appointments or posts in favor of SCs and STs. Next one is Draft Transgender Persons Protection of Rights Rule 2020. Whites in News, the draft of the Transgender Persons Protection of Rights Rules 2020 was recently published in the Gazette. It stated that a district magistrate would issue a transgender identity certificate and card based on an affidavit by the applicant but without any medical examination. The union government has scrapped the earlier provision that requires a medical examination by a government appointed doctor for a transgender person to be identified as such. The trans right movement had opposed this as it was seen as against a trans person's right to self-identification, which was upheld by the Supreme Court in 2014. The ministry has proposed a series of welfare schemes, including making at least one hospital in each state equipped to provide safe and free gender-affirming surgery, counseling and hormone replacement therapy, providing medical insurance cards, giving scholarships to trans persons, facilitating accommodation and schooling for transgender, non-conforming and intersex children at government-run schools and colleges, and universal access to food security. Also, according to the rules, all educational institutions are to have a committee which transgender persons can approach in case of any harassment or discrimination. Next one is Consumer Protection Act 2019. Whites in News, the Consumer Protection Act 2019 came into force recently. Its salient features includes the establishment of the Central Consumer Protection Authority, that is CCPA, to promote, protect and enforce the rights of consumers. A consumer is defined as a person, okay, who buys any good or avails a service for a consideration. It does not include a person who obtains a good for resale or a good or service of for commercial purpose. The consumers can file complaints at a district or state consumer commission closest to their residence rather than the location where the service or products were sold. It covers transactions through all models including offline and online through electronic means, teleshopping, multi-level marketing or direct selling. Next one is Comptroller and Auditor General of India, that is a CAG. Okay. Recently, Girish Chandra Murmu was named as the next Comptroller and Auditor General of India. Okay. According to Article 148 of the Constitution, there shall be a Comptroller and Auditor General of India. CAG shall be appointed by the President by warrant under his hand and seal. The CAG shall only be removed from office in like manner and on like grounds as a judge of the Supreme Court. On appointment, CAG has to make an oath or affirmation before the President or some person appointed in that behalf by him. Next is Lok Adalat. White's in news. In a first of its kind in the country, the Delhi State Legal Services Authority DSLSA conducted online Lok Adalat. NLSA along with other legal services institutions conduct Lok Adalats. Lok Adalat is one of the alternative dispute redressal mechanisms. It's a forum where disputes, cases pending in the court of law or at pre-litigation stage are settled, compromised amicably. Lok Adalats have been given statutory status under the Legal Services Authorities Act, that is 1987. Okay. Under the said act, the award decision made by the Lok Adalats is deemed to be a decree of a civil court. The award decision is final and binding on all parties and no appeal against such an award lies before any court of law. SC verdict on Hindu women's inheritance rights. Okay, this is the next one is SC verdict on Hindu women's inheritance rights. White's in news. Recently, the Supreme Court has expanded the Hindu women's right to be in the co-personal joint legal heir and inherit ancestral property on terms equal to male heirs. The judgment pertains to the Hindu Session Amendment Act 2005. It ruled that a Hindu woman's right to be a joint heir to the ancestral property by birth and does not depend on whether her father is alive or not. The SC expanded and promoted the amendments done in 2005, which removed the discrimination as contained in Section 6 of the Hindu Succession Act 1956 by giving equal right to daughters. It also directed high courts to dispose of cases involving this issue within 6 months, since they would have been pending for years. Election Commission of India. Next one is Election Commission of India. Vice in news. Recently, Election Commissioner Ashok Lavasa resigned to join the Asian Development Bank (ADB) as Vice President. The Election Commission of India (ECI) is a permanent constitutional body. The Constitution of India has vested in the ECI the superintendence, direction and control of the entire process for conduct of elections to Parliament and Legislature of every state, to the offices of President and Vice President of India. The President appoints Chief Election Commissioner and Election Commissioner. They enjoy the same status and receive salary and perks as available to judges of the Supreme Court of India. The Chief Election Commissioner can be removed from office only through impeachment by Parliament. The state election commissions are vested with the powers of conduct of elections to the corporations, municipalities, Jilla Parishads, district panchayats, panchayat samitis, gram panchayats and other local bodies. They are independent of the Election Commission of India. Next one is Official Language Act 1963. Vice in news. Recently, the Supreme Court tells the central government to consider amending of Official Languages Act of 1963. It is to include scheduled languages other than Hindi and English as official language of the Government of India. Scheduled languages are 22, are those languages which are listed in the 8th schedule of the Constitution and are given official recognition and encouragement by the central government. However, all official communication and publication of rules and notifications by the central government are in Hindi and English. The governor of a state may, with the previous consent of the president, authorize the use of Hindi or the official language of the state in addition to the English language for the purposes of any judgment, decree or order passed or made by the High Court for that state. Next one is National Council for Transgender Persons. Bites in news. Recently, the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment has constituted the National Council for Transgender Persons. It is a requirement under the Transgender Persons Protection of Rights Act 2019. The Union Minister of Social Justice will be the chairperson of the council and also include representatives from 10 central departments. The council also includes 5 nominated members from the transgender community. The representatives from 5 states or union territories on a rotational basis will be members of the commission. The functions of the National Council for Transgender Persons under the legislation are advising the central government on the formulation of policies, programs, legislation and projects with respect to transgender persons, monitoring and evaluating the impact of policies and programs designed for achieving equality and full participation of transgender persons, reviewing and coordinating the activities of all the departments, redressing grievances of transgender persons, and performing such other functions as prescribed by the Centre. The tenure of the community members and expert under the council shall be 3 years. Okay, that's all for now. Share our videos with your friends. Do your preparation well, revise well. Okay, thank you.